be larger than 3 acres, and they found nothing. At the same time that the sheriffs were out looking for this large, gigantic fire or explosion, a woman driving out of Monte Vista at 6:25 in the evening on January 13th reported seeing, and this is her quote, a soft green light that looked like a soft ball falling out of the sky in the same area. Her report was confirmed by another man who said the green ball appeared to hit the earth in the Rock Creek area, which is south of Monte Vista. On January 16th, the man who saw the green ball of light said that he saw 3 B-52 bombers flying high above that area. The 3 planes dived toward the Rock Creek site, flew over a low mountain called Greeny, and flew away. The next night, the sheriff's office got calls from 3 different people who said they saw a blue flare in the Rock Creek area. 4 deputies in 4-wheel drive vehicles went to the area but could not find anything. At night, on January 18th, Sheriff's Deputy Mike James was patrolling in the Rock Creek area and saw 3 helicopters flying about 100 yards apart. Because of the darkness, the deputy was unable to identify any of the helicopters. The following night, an anonymous caller who said he lived south of Monte Vista told the sheriff's office he heard 2 large explosions coming from Rock Creek. And the last report came January 21 when a resident of the Rock Creek area called the sheriff's office to report seeing a black helicopter flying overhead. The resident did not see any markings, and it was gone by the time the deputy got there. This is absolutely another example of exactly the same kind of phenomenon happening in a concentrated period of time. Green fireballs, black helicopters, animal mutilation in the San Luis Valley, law enforcement going out after things that aren't there. That happened also in 1967, and the green fireballs were what Lincoln Mackay, the scientist in the 40s to the 50s, was assigned to study in a project that has now come out in public, a thing called Project Green. So whether something now in 94 is reoccurring that happened in the 40s, we don't know yet, but the same kind of phenomena is now being reported, and I will try to keep up on this story because I think it's
research perspective, again, it wasn't my area, but it kind of dropped in my lap, and it was an important enough area for me to drop my work for a year and my other research and just follow this project. And what we found first was that these original patents by Bernard Eastman, who was hired by ARCO, a Atlantic Richfield company, which is one of the biggest oil companies in the world. And he was hired to find a way to burn natural gas on the North Slope. And then he developed a series of patents for this focused ionosphere heater, and that's how he got the patent, was that very little pretty distinguishing characteristics that are so profound that being able to focus that energy on that basis he was granted the patent, and which was assigned immediately to ARCO.
Can you tell us how that occurs? In other words, normally from a dipole radiator, as you pointed out earlier, the radiation starts with a narrow beam, and as it goes out, further it goes out, it spreads out. How do you technically reverse that process?
What they're doing is they're firing them in series, which is creating a cyclotron resonance. And so if you think about it, it's sort of corkscrewing it up as it's focusing it. But it's the firing sequence that's unique to this heater. And the way they sequence this, they created this focus beam, but it required a larger array and the ability to fire in a certain sequence to create that effect. So we had some radio engineers take a look at all of these patents and tell us how this works. And then we pulled the original patent file, which actually diagrams this effect that I'm describing. But in simple terms, it's a firing sequence with the antennas and a particular antenna configuration design that created this effect. One of the other things that we found in those patents, and this is what really triggered my interest from the very beginning, is there were these references to New York Times articles, one from 1915 and one from 1940. And I thought, what the heck is that? New York Times article referencing a patent that's from the 1980s, going back that far. And the first thing that got to my mind was the Saturday patent. And when I pulled those New York Times articles about the Joshua and it was about this weapon system that people still talk about and remember, which was the system that would melt engines at distance and would create all of these really highly unusual effects. People equated it with particle beams and all different kinds of things. But that was the stimulus to Bernard Eastman's genius as he applied it to this particular technology.
Do you think what they call the deep weapon that was focused on?
I think probably so. It's just that, when you look back to Tesla's patents and the terminology, everything was, evolving, so the words were so confusing. I think maybe they're better because they sort of talk more about the effects. But I think that's probably what was going on. But the fact is, it was the stimulus that Bernard Eastman to create this particular patent and the others that went with it. And then coming off of that, there were other scientists surrounding this project, and they then took Bernard Eastman's ideas and using a much smaller antenna design, one on more of the order of what HAARP currently is, and they developed these over-the-horizon radar effects, power beaming technology. In fact, this system that was being experimented by Raytheon Corporation in the 60s, the same scientist that was doing the work then is now sitting at the University of Fairbanks on a project called SABRE.
Okay, when you talk about power beaming, you're talking about sending actual usable amounts of electrical energy in a beam.
That's right. And what they visualized was there's three paths. One is for the beaming system, one is for the reflector, and one is for a receiving antenna. And they look at it in a couple of different ways. One is suspending platforms in space, where they can run these long-term missions by sending energy up. And the biggest handicap has always been being able to get enough energy up because of that problem with the further you go, the less energy gets delivered at a point.
At that point, we have got to stop our energy and turn it over to the news. So relax, you've got about 7 minutes. We'll be back to you. My guest is Dr. Nick Begich, all the way from Alaska. The co-author of a book called Angels Don't Play. This
You're listening to our show, Summer in Time. Tonight featuring a replay of Coast to Coast AM from December 1st, 1995. presents Art Bell, Summer in Time. Tonight's program originated December 1st, 1995.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Art Bell. My guest is Dr. Nick Begich. He co-authored a book called Angels Don't Play This Part. It's about a project in Alaska that you need to stream a little bit and listen to. For years, people have talked about mind control. This may be the real thing. We'll update you on what HAARP is and what it might be doing in just a moment. All right, I think that this is a wise thing to do. you're joining us, San Francisco and others on this hour. So, let us retrench. If you would like to send in a fax with a question for Dr. Begich, who's in Alaska, which, by the way, is where the Heart Project is located. My fax number is area code 702-727-8499. 702-727-8499. And it makes sense to begin this way. Hi, Art. I missed the first half hour or so of your show. Could you please tell us again, please, Doctor, what HAARP stands for?
It stands for the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project. And what it really amounts to is HAARP is a very large radio frequency transmitter that sends an effective radiative power to the ionosphere to upper portions between 50 and 660 miles above the Earth's surface. It sends up to 1 billion watts of effective radiative power. That's 1 gigawatt.
Billion watts?
That's correct. That's the effective radiative power. Now, the input power is less than that, but there's a factor of what they call an antenna gain.
Sure.
So what you get, according to the government record, is 1,000 times antenna gain. So a megawatt in is a gigawatt out. That's a phase one. That's where this first phase is headed. Right now it's going at about a third of that power, headed for a gigawatt within the next 12 months or so.
All right, question. We have all these reports of magnetic anomalies. Tons and tons of them went on for the whole night. Could the HAARP Project cause such an anomaly?
You know, I've heard the same speculation, and it's possible. It would take some, at this power level, it would take probably a number of unique circumstances. Things would already have to be at a threshold. But let's talk about that. This is where the root of our concern really lies with us. And if you look back historically, when you're talking magnetic anomalies, there's been actually three magnetic shifts in the last 80,000 years. At one point, the magnetic north was sitting somewhere in Yukon about 80,000 years ago. It shifted out to just off the coast of Norway, and then 50,000 years ago, it shifted to the Hudson Bay area, and then 15,000 years ago, approximately, it shifted to its current location. Now, what all caused that is some speculation.
Okay, I was going to ask you, does that mean, Doctor, in your opinion, best guess, that magma is moving under the Earth, or does it mean an iron core latest theory is somehow shifting, or what do you think might be going on to shift the magnetic poles? How can it happen?
It could be both of those factors, combination of those factors, as well as there's been some speculation that aligning up with planetary bodies creates a resonance effect in terms of gravity waves. I mean, there's lots of different speculation. The fact is, it does have a question because when you look around the planet today, everyone knows the planet is releasing a lot of energy right now. Look at all the earthquakes, weather patterns, disruptions, not just the United States, but all over the planet.
Yes, correct.
And it's increasing. I mean, if you look historically back the last 20, 30 years, you can see a real clear curve on that graph, no matter what you're charting.
Right.
It's worse and worse and worse. Now, the question is, here we are in Alaska with about 1 gigawatt on phase one, a billion watts, 4.7 billion watts on phase two, and a desired level, according to government documents that we obtained to put this book together, they want to get up to 100 billion watts.
Oh my
So the
God.
question is, where's the straw on that camel's back?
I want the average person out there, Doctor, needs to understand how much power that is. Now, the strongest AM radio station that I transmit on legally in the U.S. is the big ones, like KOMO, and there could be a whole list of them, are 50,000 watts. And you just said at the top of the project they're going to be talking about 100 billion watts?
That's the desired level according to government records that we found. And that was in a document that the government, in the way they described it, even denied that that document exists. And then we got the document. They consider an unpublished document that's read at 613 pages long. And in the midst of that is this little section that sort of lays out where it was in the working group section of the early scientific researchers that were putting HAARP together, the HAARP planning memorandum. It was for internal use only, and we were able to get a copy of it. I don't want to really say how, but it wasn't classified. It was just, they denied that it was published, and they said it was a technical memorandum, and we tried it in the book, and we make it available to media when they ask for it. But what you're talking about in those power levels is huge. I mean, when you're talking about, even at the levels of, say, 4.7 gigawatts up to, say, 10 gigawatts. We had Princeton, New Jersey physicist, Dr. Richard Williams comment in our book. And the way here's how he characterized it, okay? And this makes it pretty simple. They refer to at one point we need to go at least 100 GVW. One way to visualize this power level is that a 10 billion watt generator running continuously for 1 hour can deliver a quantity of energy equal to that of a Hiroshima-sized atomic bomb. Okay? And now we're talking about that because one of the applications of this transmitter also is to create an electromagnetic pulse, or an EMP. And before the way those were created was upper atmospheric detonation of thermonuclear weapons. And they create this energy pulse and knock out electronic circuits over very large areas.
That's right.
The problem is, it's a little messy, okay? So we can't watch the same thing. But think about the rest now, everyone's saying, okay, let's get rid of the thermonuclear. And you gotta wonder, what do they got to replace it? Well, this technology, according to Pat, is exceptional for that application. So
You're saying that it can create an EMP pulse without a nuclear detonation.
right, so you have an EMP without radiation, and you can directionally direct it using ionic circuit.
How narrow do you think Greenwood at the point back on Earth would be? Do you have any guesses?
Well, they're saying like, I think my memory serves me, it's about 30 degrees.
30 degrees. All right, well listen, everybody, again, we're talking about radiation in frequencies between 1 and 30 hertz, which has a distinct biological effect on human beings. It confuses them. We really don't quite know what it does, but it affects the biological human being. Physiological.
I think we do know what it is. I mean, it will definitely get to our function. There's no question the literature is clear. And we lay that literature out in a very pragmatic way as we approach it. And we only cite military documents and mainstream science, mainstream media, because that's all you need.
All right, what have you got? You got confusion. What actually happens to a person subjected at what power levels at these frequencies? What happens to it?
At 1/50th power level that would naturally occur in the Earth, you know, that's the power level necessary to create a mood swing, to create a state where you just can't think clearly, things are confused. And what you're talking about is kind of the right waveform, pulse at the right frequency, and that frequency range is at 1 to 30 hertz. Now, if you think about, let me just kind of go through where that's at. In the lower range, say 1 hertz to around 4 hertz is a state that you're in when you're very, very deep sleep. The next level, which is called theta, which is running from about 4 to say 7 hertz, is a state that you're in sort of in a semi-deep state. You might even hit some of that when you're awake. Also state, next state up, is a good state for creative work, creative thinking. And then above that, it's also a 13 hertz to get into beta, which is sort of an awake, alert state. But the higher you go, the more agitated you get. So if you hit 30 hertz, like a dominant brainwave frequency, that's what you're doing when you're screaming at somebody. It's a very loud depth.
Or either that, grabbing them by the throat and choking.
Right. And so you've got this broad thing, but what happens is your brain waves, with the right pulse energy coming in, will lock onto that. And then you become what's called brain entrainment. So the frequency locks on and causes a response. That response works very quickly. And it's demonstrated at Yale University by Jose Delgado for 2 decades. First with electrodes implanted and then wirelessly using radio frequency at the scale you're impulsing. And his work continues today in Madrid at the University of Madrid in France. And it's well known that this effect occurs. There's a lot of literature that sort of lays that part out. But the biological effect, in fact, if you visualize the human body, all right, you start the way Western science approaches it. We start from the outside with the everything else, basically. But when you look at what you really are, you start at the energy level, the atomic level, a molecular level, a chemical level, a body part level, cellular, and so on, all the way up. So if you affect the energy level in a way that resonates, that pulses at the same frequency and resonance with chemicals within the body, you can create amped up, if you will, chemical reactions that then manifest as disorders in the personal cells and later in body components and the body itself. So when you think about energy interactions with human beings, they're not detached. I mean, we are attached. And if you direct those in a certain way, you can create profound effects. There's now there's a lot of debate because people claim traditional American medicine approaches to one angle. People trained in physics that look at the human body, they don't see physical applications in physics to human beings any more than applied to anything else.
All right, and again, the military, to backtrack again, is telling us the HART project, and I've seen the photos of the antenna arrays up there. Where is it located, by the way?
It's about 250 miles north east of Anchorage and about the same distance southwest of Fairbanks.
Okay. The stated goals of HART, they say it's certainly harmless to human beings, and they're suggesting it's to look for underground caverns and bunkers and whatever, map the underground, and or to heat the ionosphere toward what end, Doctor?
They're saying for communication purposes.
Communication.
But when you look at HART, think of this transmitter as a hammer, and you can build a whole lot of different things with that hammer, depending on the knowledge and intent of the operator. You can build that earth penetrating tomography application that can do it. You can build the over-the-horizon radar application that we're talking about. You can build the communication application. Interesting thing about the communications application is at the high enough power level, they can essentially, according to the patent, knock out communications, land, sea, and air, while using the same system to carry their own communications. In other words, they can wipe out the radio stations that we're talking on tonight, television, every bit of communication.
Wow.
And yet carry their own.
And yet communicate with, say, submarines at sea. So they're creating modulated EMP pulse
Right.
that is destroying other communication while allowing their communications.
Right. And we found a document. This one was really a profound document. And it's one that came very late in our research, but we did get it in the book. And it was by the International Red Cross in Geneva. And the text itself, I'm pulling it as I'm talking to you, was called Expert Meeting on Certain Weapon Systems and on the Implementation Mechanisms in International Law. And it's from June of 1994. And this specific document was very important because what it laid out is the various frequency ranges that you use for a number of effects using radio frequency or microwave weapon systems. And when we had our expert, if you will, in the radio frequency issues look at that document and compare it to the HART contract document, HART will produce all of the effects I'm about to describe, which include biological effects as far as deleterious or negative biological effects causing debilitation, loss of mental function, to bit errors in computers. That's where the things aren't flowing right through the computers in such a way as it's just all garbage coming out, to melting surface. I mean, this whole range of things based on how much energy and at what frequency ranges is transmitted. So here's an international document that sort of lays out that, and it's the only document we ever found where it's just matched. I mean, perfectly matched with the HART specification. So now the question becomes, and this is the question everybody asks, well, would our government do that? Well, let me tell you.
Oh, hell yes.
They certainly would. And when you look back on the history, and to quote a little bit, I'm going to pull up,
Well, the applications, possible applications for a weapon system, they're so obvious that the question is almost not worth asking. Of course they would do it. Of course they would research it. And I'm sure others are as well. But the question is, do they know what the hell they're doing? And do they know what the effects will be? When they first detonated an atomic weapon, there were people who thought unfortunately it didn't happen, that air molecules might actually ignite or chain react, and we blow up our whole atmosphere. Now, I'm not saying something like this will happen with HAARP, but do they really know when they start pumping out a billion, what is it, 100 billion watts?
That's what they desire. What they have right now is designed is for 1 billion watts. That is on phase 2, which the contract is led on, but not funded yet, 4.7 billion watts. And then it's modular, it's designed to be added to continuous rate. The question is, what will it do? Do they really know? I think all of the scientists involved on the front end of the project probably don't see the big picture, because the way the military works, just like in the Manhattan Project that you were referring to earlier,
All
compartmentalized.
sure.
Yeah. Do they know for sure what will happen? No. But the people running this program, are people that are in the business of making the best killing system. So they're going to develop the best system they can. And when you look back on atomic research, they knew the effects of those blasts in Nevada. They knew what was going to happen all the way back 50 years ago. They just didn't bother to tell the American people about it.
All right, on that note, let's hold it right there. Dr. Nick Begich is my guest. He co-authored Angels Don't Play This Harp. And I would have to second that. Boy, is this ever fascinating. Hope you're tracking with us. More in a moment.
You're listening to Art Bell, Somewhere in Time on Premier Radio Networks. Tonight, an encore presentation of Coast to Coast AM from December 1st, 1995.
Would our government lie to us about a project like this? No. What a traitorous thing to imagine. Would our government experiment on us without our permission? It's never happened. It never will happen. Our government? Never. Right, Doctor?
Wrong. In our research, we point to activities with the CIA, with a number of experiments that they were involved with. One in particular that's gotten quite a bit of notoriety was the LSD experiment on 8,000 military personnel without their permission or consent. Military experimentation up here involved in Alaska during the Cold War, injecting Native Alaskans with radioactive iodine without their permission or consent. When you look at the atomic program in Nevada, they did the atmospheric blast, assured everyone that everything was safe, and yet now, 50 years later, we found out that they know what they knew then, we know now. It just took us 50 years to catch up. What our book does, it doesn't wait for 50 years. We found out what they're up to, we document it in a way that no one can deny, and yet it's today. And it is today in the sense that we can still do something about this project before it moves forward very much further. And I think the things that we're talking about, and that we talked about tonight, the idea of mental disruption, I mean, this hits the root of who we are as Americans, who we are as free people. When you can interfere with the way people think, you can forget about what we say, you can forget about the projection of what we might write, because if you can't think clearly, none of those things matter. So this is really striking, and this is, from my political background, this is what strikes me the most. The most profound thing is, here's a technology that is capable of disrupting the way we think. And going back to Zbigniew Brzezinski, who wrote in the early 70s about this technology, projecting that someday it would come about, he said, a more controlled and directed society would gradually appear linked to technology. And then the quote that I pulled from his book was, unhindered by the restraints of traditional values, this elite would not hesitate to achieve its political ends by using the latest modern techniques for influencing public behavior and keeping society under close surveillance and control. technological and scientific momentum is then freed on the situation it exploits, unquote. This was the national security advisor to Jimmy Carter, and he was predicting this technology within the book that I mentioned earlier called Between Two Ages.
You know, it's a funny thing about that. I recall some early comedies. I can't recall the name of the show. It doesn't matter. I think it's Barney Miller or something. Where people would come running in and claim that the telephone company microwave was causing their brain to go scattered and was affecting them. And, you know, they were total nutcases. And it's from comedy and science fiction to today's science reality. And this is really, actually, what HAARP truly may be.
That's correct.
Now, the questions I've got coming in by fax are as follows. For example, and these are really good questions. Would you ask your guest, Art, if there's any way to put together a building or, and this is going to sound crazy, let it be so, some sort of helmet or some sort of thing that would protect people from this radiation?
Yes, actually there is. And I spoke with Dr. Patrick Flanagan, who many of your listeners may be familiar with. And he was one of our technical advisors on the project. I met with him a couple of weeks ago, and this question keeps coming up. And what he has suggested, and I haven't got a price list, but I'll give you the descriptor as he gave it to me, is if you take a white noise generator, disconnect the wires that go to the sound output of a white noise generator, put those leads into a power amplifier on the input side of a power amplifier, and then on the output side of that power amplifier, if you connect a insulated wire, say standard wire, 18 gauge, 16 gauge.
Let me stop you for a second. White noise, here, to give you an example, if I can get it going here. That's white noise. That's simply a combination of all noises coming out of a radio, right? When it's not tuned to anything specific.
Basically, yes. But by running it through the power amplifier, and then you take the output side of that power amplifier, connect an insulated wire lead, and run that wire lead around the area that you're looking to insulate around the effect. And here's what's going to happen. Is an ELF at extremely low frequency. This is helpful also for any ELF in the area, whether it's spark generated or generated by normal circuits within your house. What it will do is it keeps the ELF from locking on to biological systems, because ELF in the range from 1 hertz up to about 100 hertz can lock on to a biological system and create a number of effects. What it does is keep it from locking on. The white noise, in fact, that's through the power amplifier sets up a field that just disrupts ELF and it keeps from locking up. So it's a way to insulate, at least within a confined area, against ELF. Now, Patrick is working on some things that might be a little more portable because you can't walk around with power amplifiers and all of that. But that's down the road. At some point, we're going to we've got a newsletter coming out in January that's mentioned in the very last pages of the book, and we'll actually have a circuit design and a component so you can go to a local Radio Shack or electronics store, get those components and put something together on your own. And that's, it's kind of something we want to make sure everyone is aware of, that you get a regular parts list that makes it simple for people to deal with.
Now, what do we know about the present activation level of HAARP? In other words, has the HAARP begun to play yet?
Yes, it has, and they have run intermittently a series of tests. They started December 15th last year, which has been mentioned to us correlated with an 8-state power outage on the same day.
Oh, do I remember that power outage.
Okay, well that was the same day they activated HAARP in the first test phase.
I've got news for you. It was more than 8 states. They reported it in the press, I think, as 8 states. But I did an all-night show on it. It's the damnedest show I ever did. It was like the show on magnetism the other night. We got these really weird reports. Suddenly power went out here. And simultaneously it went out across, I would say, almost the western third of the entire U.S. and Alaska. And I think exactly what you're talking about.
Well, it could have very well have been HAARP. I mean, it certainly is, it's there, and what happens when you energize, it's following magnetic lines of force. So, could it have been? Maybe so. It's pretty coincidental for all that to happen. But intermittently since then, they've run these various tests. Currently, what's planned for the winter is research penetrating tomography, and it's kind of hung up in the national budget. They have $15 million budgeted for next year for testing that application. And kind of here's an interesting side note. When they went to the Congress to get the funding for this project, they sold that Congress on this counter-proliferation, non-proliferation application of the technology, and the Congress said to them in their Senate report, you can't have any more money until you make that a principal part of your project, and in effect, it delayed the project for a year, which has gave us time to finish our work, get it out in front of the public, and is delaying it long enough for people to react, and maybe they won't get that second round of funding if enough people complain to the Congress.
Maybe. But, these kind of projects seem to find a way and route in the funding somehow or another through some black project.
That's true. And let's talk about that real quick, because the corporate chain on this project is really interesting when we talk about black projects. APTI was this little bitty subsidiary of ARCO Atlantic Richfield, and what they were was they reported $5 million a year in annual sales, and yet the initial HAARP project was $30 million. That was the construction contract that they won, and they won it based on the proprietary of the special patents that they own, which were these 12 we described in the book. What they then did is sell out that subsidiary to a company called E-Systems, which was featured in the Washington Post in 60 Minutes early this year and late last year as being one of the most secret companies in the U.S.
I recall, yes.
It has $2.1 billion in annual sales, most of which, $1.8 billion, was for security agencies, CIA, NSA, military intelligence, and $800 million of that are black projects, so secret, even the Congress doesn't know what they're for.
Wow.
And then E-Systems, interestingly, got gobbled up in April of this year by a company called Raytheon, which was at that time the 42nd largest company on the Fortune 500 list.
Yes.
And is a major weapons system manufacturer, in fact, the Patriot missile system is theirs. And they were, interestingly enough, one of the original bidders on the HAARP project, and they didn't get the contract, but now they got it.
Oh, so they Raytheon absorbed the project.
Yeah, they had all the patents. They bought out E-Systems, which bought out APTI, and so they ended up owning the project lock, stock, and barrel. And what this project is, and the way we can best characterize it, this is a ground-based Star Wars weapon system.
It's going to get funded back.
Yeah, I think at some point it's going to, but people need to be aware of it, and people need to start focusing on what our government is doing, because this is just one more reflection of a government that's gone out of control, and it's being run by a bureaucracy that exists from administration to administration, from political group to political group. It doesn't matter whether it's Republicans, Democrats, Independents, because the underlying government is in fact the bureaucracy that stays for 20 and 30 years at a time. They don't go away with administration. They work these projects from start to finish over decades of time, not tied to election cycles. But people need to realize that, and people need to be conscious of it and start looking for them to jump in the game and get a handle on some of these kind of projects.
Well, one wonders if they can even jump that high. Doctor, here's a question. Keith in Wisconsin, WLIP does.